Hello everybody and welcome to my video. So today we are working on block 5 of the hide and seek pattern. It is a block of the month that was put together by Pink Door Fabrics, and they created this from a pattern called hide and seek, and I can't remember who created the pattern, but I have it in the notes below, so make sure you check that out. So this is going to be block 5. As I mentioned in another video, the blocks were sent a little out of order because they didn't have the right fabrics for this block when it was supposed to be mailed. It was actually supposed to be mailed in December. They ended up skipping December, and then this got mailed in February. Block 7 got mailed in January. So I am a couple months behind, so I'm actually working on this next, which is in order. My last video was for block 4, so it worked out for me. But just so you know, if you've been keeping up, this is a little bit, just came in February is when this fabric came. All right, so we're gonna work on block 5-1 first, and the block of the month does come with a cutting assistant, so if you have that, definitely use it. It'll help you a lot. Hopefully my videos will also help you. This block is pretty straightforward. The center is gonna be the only piece that's really gonna be fussy cut quite a bit, so we'll save that for last, and I'll just show you real quick how to do the other 3 fabrics, just really quick, down and dirty, how to do them. And yeah, let's get into it. All right. So this is a stripe, a beautiful stripe. We're going to use this piece for the stripes. And the way the stripes are done, they don't meet in the center, so it gives this almost whirligig type of pattern to it. And I think I actually like that. I've seen this done where the stripes match and actually make stripes, but I think I like the rotation that they did on the cutting assistant for this. So I think I'm going to match that. And the easiest way to match that and make sure that you're consistent every single time. So first of all, we need 5 for each rosette, I guess is what you would call it. Let me turn off the main light so you can see my light board. So I need 5 pieces to start for each one, and then I believe there's 10 total. So I'm going to need 50 of these. I'm just going to start with 5 for this video. You'll get the idea. Obviously, just repeat what I do. I think my light board needs some charging. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry about that. So what you want to do is you just want to make sure that you are consistent with how you place your paper down every single time so that the stripes don't go in a different direction on you. So if I were to place this one here, and then this one here, so you know they're going different directions, my stripes wouldn't rotate around the right way. So you just want to be really careful and maybe keep an example out for yourself as you're placing them. You want to be really careful to keep them consistent. And then the second tip that I have is lining your top edge up with the top of either the gold or the pink, doesn't really matter, just whichever one you want. Because when you line up with the gold, that makes the pink the bottom. If you line up with the pink, it makes the gold the bottom. Whichever one you line up with the top is going to be a full stripe. The bottom one will be slightly less than a full stripe. So whichever, like I said, it doesn't matter. Just again, you want to be consistent. So whatever you do for the first one, you want to do for all 50. So I'm going to do the gold stripes since that's going to use the least amount of fabric here. I like to do little dots in each corner to make sure that my paper doesn't shift at all while I'm placing all of my papers down. And I just want to make sure it's nice and firm on that top stripe. Sorry, I do have a little bit of a cold. So I can already tell I'm not completely straight. I'm not sure if I care that much, but I think I'm going to lift it up and redo it, because I'm not sure that it matters if it's off a little bit in the grand scheme of things. But where this is my first one, and I'm just getting back in the swing of doing this quilt because I haven't worked on it in a few months. I just want to try and be as precise as possible. So that's what we're going to do. Okay. Not sure if that's better. I probably need I have reader glasses I should probably grab. Let me grab those real quick. So I bought these reader glasses. They fold up into a little hard case so I can keep them with my quilting stuff. And they just unfold and I can use them. They are 1.5 times magnification. Oh yeah, that makes a big difference. All right. So like I said, I'm just going to do 5 of these real quick just to give you the idea, but you want to use the same method for all 50. So we just want to make sure we're leaving enough space in between for seam allowance. Make sure it's nice and pressed down and just keep going. So I was going to try and fit one more and cut it out if I could, but it's not going to fit. So you're going to only get 5 per row because you do want to make sure you have a healthy seam allowance. And even if I scrunched them in a little bit, it still wouldn't be enough for seam allowance on this side. So you can give them a nice, healthy, wide seam allowance because you're only going to fit 5 in each row regardless. So let's go ahead and cut these out. So again, as far as cutting, I want to leave a healthy seam allowance. I can be right on like below this yellow, but that means my next start's going to be here, which is perfectly fine. That leaves enough seam allowance on the top. So that is pretty easy, straightforward. Best use of fabric for these. So basically you're going to use 10 rows of stripes. And I like to hand cut all of my fabrics. I do these EPP projects because I like doing everything by hand. If I have to take out the rotary cutter and the rotary mat, then it just feels like an extra step that it takes extra time. So I really like just using the scissors. It's just as quick to me and is a little bit more precise when we're doing all this fussy cutting and everything anyways. So I will go ahead, I'll cut one out and then I'll cut out the rest and baste them on fast forward for you guys, but just to show you how I do one. So I will trim them all so they have a pretty healthy seam allowance. And you want to trim the corners. If you imagine, if you've ever worked with acrylics, I don't use the acrylic templates, but they're pretty smart that they have these sharp corners flattened. Because what happens is when you fold this over, ultimately, if I hadn't trimmed that off, I'd have an extra piece of dog ear here, whereas now it folds in. And so I try to mimic that with my scissors. I just cut off each angle. Basically, if it's an angle that creates a sharp point. So this one I wouldn't have to do it on because this isn't going to create, when I fold it, it's already, it doesn't stick out beyond the fabric, if that makes sense. Whereas with this one, if I folded this and I hadn't trimmed it, it would stick out beyond the edge of this fabric. So that's kind of the idea. There's only 3 shapes, so you'll get an idea. Like on this one, you want to do the 2 corners here. And then, so on the diamonds, you just basically want to do the sharpest points. So that's what you do, is blunt those. I'll just move this over. And then as far as basting, again, you want to baste every single diamond that you do in this project the same way. So for this project, I'm making the ears go in opposite directions, and I'm starting in the top right to do that. So every single diamond, no matter what shape it is, this one, even this one, I'm making sure that I'm starting in the top right. And I also have found that it makes it easiest if you are consistent with the way you do it with your pattern, if that makes sense. So for this one, I have my orange that it was the top that I had placed it down to the left here. And if I do all 50 of them where the orange is to the left, they're going to nest together a little bit easier when I'm sewing them, because there will be folds once I'm done, and all those folds will fall the same exact way if I make sure my orange stripe is to the left every single time. So although it may not be the biggest deal, if you didn't do that, you're not gonna fail at making, but it's little things like that that do make your life a little bit easier when you are sewing. Is something that I have definitely learned by not doing that and then doing that. So I've done both in this quilt, of being consistent about how I place the diamond before I start gluing, and then not really caring which way I place it. And I do have to say that placing them where they all go the same direction, it just makes it so much easier. So we're gonna go ahead and glue base this. So you can see I started up here and just go around in counterclockwise direction. Again, you can go clockwise or counterclockwise, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is your consistency. So if you decide to stop and start in this corner and go clockwise, which probably makes more sense, you just want to make sure literally every single diamond you're doing in this quilt, you do that way. That's all you need to do. So you can see there's a little bit of pink showing here, so obviously I kind of didn't hit that line well, but looks good. I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to be that fussy about it, because once all 10 are together, you're really not going to even notice that. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out the rest of the 5 and baste them, and then show you what it looks like when they all come together. Okay, so we are all done. So you can see that all of my tails go the same way with the stripe, whereas if I wasn't careful about lining up, like I said, the yellow on this corner, every time I folded, the tails might go different ways. And also you can see these folds are all the same. So now when I go to sew these together like this, all of my folds will be the same, and this makes it line up so much easier when you can see the folds on both sides are the same. Whereas if you were to do it like this, which actually is going to be the wrong way, it makes it harder to line up the sides when your folds are going opposite directions. I don't know exactly how to describe that really well, but I think once you get in the habit of making sure that your fabrics are laying the same way when you're basting them and all your folds go the same way, you will understand the difference that it makes in lining everything up later. So the way that these are going to fall out is basically we are going to go around the circle like this. And I really like this look. Look, gives it a nice pinwheel effect that comes together in the center there. So that is the effect that they were going for in the cutting assistant, so that's what we went with. So next up is going to be the stripes, and we're going to need 50 of these as well, and these are going to nest into the corners of these. So each of these 10 stars is going to need 5 of the stripes. So there's, I'm sorry, 4 of the stripes. So each one gets 4, so actually you need 40. So you do 1, 2, 3, 4. So those will have stripes, those white papers. And then one side stays open on every single medallion. So when you're putting these together, you want to sew the center like this and then sew on 4 sides. And what happens is when you place them all together, this corner becomes the 5th side for this piece. So when I have a second one, the back corner will become the 5th side. So they basically share a piece is what happens. So that's why you want to make sure you're cutting 4 for each medallion, not 5, because you will overcut your fabric if you do 5 for each. So 40 total, 4 for each side. And we're going to do the stripes. I think I'm just going to stay with the pattern for now. I like the look of it. So we're going to do the stripes where the line is going to go through the center this way. So let me move that off. So I keep a little silicone cup. It's just a collapsible cup that you can buy off of Amazon as my trash can. I like it because it folds flat, so it can go right into my travel sewing kit. And I can open it up, use it for a trash can, empty it, and then fold it flat again. So we're just going to fill this with my trash pieces, and we'll set it aside for now. So I'm going to show you again, I'll show you the 4 stripes. So we'll finish off this medallion, and then of course you'll want to do 40 total using the method that I'm going to show you. So that's you know, I won't necessarily show you how I do all 40, but you'll get the idea with the 4. So these are fairly straightforward. I actually don't even use the light board for this because it's really easy to eyeball the line right through the 2 corners. So that's all we need to do. And we just want to make sure we're far enough down that we have a good seam allowance, and I can go far enough this way. So I just need 4 of those. And of course, when you're doing a big batch of these, you want to do them all at once. You wouldn't cut each medallion like I am right now. So I would fill this whole fabric with them, cut them all out, and baste them all. But I'm just doing the 4 for now, just so that you can see. And again, I like to put a little glue in my corners so that nothing shifts when I am cutting. And we just want to really make sure, I'm not worried about where the rest of the diamond lands. I just want to make sure that stripe goes right through the middle of the diamond, because that's what's the eye is gonna see ultimately when we, so actually I don't even really need glue on these tips, so we'll save some glue, just do the 2 corners and the middle. So I'm gonna go ahead and do 4 of these. And actually this particular pattern is a good one to do them all at once rather than doing 4 at a time, because the way it cuts out, it's gonna be a little weird, but that's okay. I just want to show you this. So eyeball your seam allowance. You want to make sure you have a good seam allowance. And when you're cutting these out, if you are not cutting out all 40 at once, which you may want to do them at 10 at a time or something like that, just to keep it a little bit under control. What you'll want to do is definitely cut around the diamonds so that you can still use the fabric below without having to. So if I was doing more of these, I would have another one nested here. So I'm not going to do that right now because it's just never ending. They all nest. But if I were to just cut a straight line like this, I would have to start my next diamond down here in order to have the right seam allowance. So I'm wasting all of this fabric. So we just want to make sure we're not doing that if you're not cutting them all out at once. Obviously, if you lay them all down at once, then you don't have to worry about that so much. So what I do is I come up here and I actually come to, so remember we had talked about snipping the corners anyway. So I come to the line where I would snip that corner, and I'm going to go straight across, and then we're going to go in between the two. And you can see that's cut out, and I still saved some of my fabric there so that I can nest in the next one hopefully. And we go to the same line, come across. So same pattern. And I would say generally Pink Door does give you plenty of fabric, so if you don't want to worry about this, then you certainly don't have to, but I have been trying to preserve my fabric so that hopefully I can use it for another project and not have to buy more fabric for another project. Although this project feels like it's going to be a lifetime project, so maybe I won't have time for another one. I don't know. So this one I'm just going to go straight across because I'm not going to fit anything here anyway. So I'm just going to go straight across with that one. And that gives me my 4 pieces. And so again, I'm going to finish trimming these and then baste them. Since this fabric is symmetrical, it doesn't matter which way I line up the fabric to baste it. So this one is fine. But again, I just want to make sure I'm starting where I always do, which for me is the top right, and then going around. So if you like clockwise, make sure you start here. So, but as far as lining them up, it doesn't matter because they're the same either way. So I'm going to cut these out, baste them, and then show you how it looks with the other pieces. All right, so these are all set. So let's go ahead and line up our middle again. It's easiest to line up if they're all going in the same direction. Okay, and then these are gonna go like this. So again, you want to do 4 per medallion. You want to leave 1 space open. And you'll get 10 pieces that look exactly like that. So 10 pieces that have 1 space open. And then, like I said, they'll nest into each other because they do share a side. So easy as that for those. Then the next step is going to be the center of the medallion, which we have this heart fabric for. That's going to go on the outside of the center medallion. And this one is pretty straightforward. You're just going to center a heart. So that's pretty much all there is to that. Just use your light board to center that heart. And then we're going to do our hamsters. And we're going to try and pick 10 hamsters that look the same. That's going to be the goal. So we're going to play around with that. I'm going to try and figure it out a little bit, get my game plan off camera, and then we'll show you how I'm going to do it. So that'll be the next steps. So like I said, next up is these hearts. So let's go ahead and get started here. So I think I'm not going to be concerned with whether the heart is facing up or down, as long as it's centered. And you could use some sort of marking to do this. I'm not going to. I'm just going to eyeball it because the diamond really does fit around these yellow hearts that go around it, so it's pretty easy to make them all the same. The only difference will be which way the hearts are facing, and I'm not going to worry about that. I can worry about it when I'm actually stitching things together if I really care that much. I don't think it matters too much. So again, I'm going to put glue on each corner and a little bit in the middle so nothing shifts around on me. Make sure you always close your glue stick when you're done, otherwise it'll get too sticky. And I'm just going to make sure my 4 corners evenly have a heart centered, that yellow heart, and that will center the red heart in the middle of my diamond. And it's as easy as that. And let me see. So if you do them side by side like that, that might be a little bit too tight of a seam allowance. You're going to use a lot more fabric though if you don't do that. So I think you need 10 of these. So I think what I'm going to do is I do like a nice healthy seam allowance. So I think I'm just going to go 10 across. They give you plenty of fabric, and I don't even know if this fabric is fabric reused. I guess that'll help me. So it is used in a future block, but you only need 2 small pieces. So I have plenty here to not worry about having a tight seam allowance. So I think what I will do is put the second one down here. I'll go ahead and do 2 of these. So we'll put the second one down here in this row. Like I said, I'm just lining up the hearts so that each corner has a heart. And then I'm just going to go across like this. So these centers are not going to have papers on them because I feel like the seam allowance will be a little bit too narrow if I do it that way. Not the end of the world. If you do want to preserve fabric, you can certainly do that. Just a little cutting it too close for my comfort. So I will go ahead and, I'm going to do all 10 of these right now just to get them done. So we'll do that in fast motion. Cut them out and show you what we got left. So the last one we're going to work on is the hamsters. We're working from the back side of the fabric. I have my template that I made, and you can see in another video how I made these, but I made one for each type of diamond that we have in this project, and it helps me to do these duplicating patterns that are you really need to be precise with. So this is a page protector plastic, and then I have a wet erase marker instead of a dry erase. So wet erase will stay on the plastic until I wipe it off with a wet paper towel instead of a dry one. So if you smudge it with your hand or whatever, it's not gonna rub off, which I think is a lot easier. So I'm trying to decide how I want to do the hamster in the cutting. I believe it has the hamster on its side like this. I kind of like the idea of him being upright and having this one little flower at the top here and then a flower next to him, so it kind of cuts off his booty a little bit, and then it gives me a little bit of pink in the middle from, I don't think you can see that on camera, so I have a little bit of pink in the middle from a lower hamster. If I can get that to be the same all the time, I don't know. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this on my template and then see where the repeat is for this. If I can use this guy and get the same, which I'm assuming I probably can't because it doesn't look like there's a hamster below him. So that means I gotta find, so I'll have one here, and then I gotta find where the next repeat of that is, which is probably down there. So if I want it to be exact, I might have to do some Swiss cheese on this hamster fabric. So let me see. First of all, I always want to know if we're going to reuse this fabric. If we're not going to reuse it, we are not reusing it. So that's good. So that means if I do have to use every inch of this fabric, that's fine. And even if I use every inch, there's going to be lots of fabric in between to be used for other projects. So I'm going to start by drawing, and so my center has no plastic in it. That's where I slide in my template. So I want to make sure I'm only drawing on the edges. So we're just going to draw some of the flowers so I know how to place this. We'll draw this flower stem, this guy, we'll do this flower. So I want to do a little bit on each side so my template stays in the same spot every time, hopefully. So I hit all 4 sides with something so that it'll hopefully line up the same every single time. So what I'm going to do is put in my first paper. So I have my papers here. Again, this is one you definitely want to put a little glue in each corner. You don't want those corners moving around. You want this super precise. This paper isn't the easiest to see through, so you just want to do your best to place it centered in that template. And then each time I place my paper, I just want to make sure. So I had my paper at the top, and I just want to make sure I do that the same, kind of have an idea of where it lands on this hamster, etc., etc. So that's our first one. So let's do our second one, which would be, can I do a second one? Oh, shoot. Oh, it would be this guy. Can I fit him? I might be able to fit. That might not have been a good choice. So this is where the trial and error comes in. So let's see how this works. So this would be this guy with this. Oh, this might be okay. So this is my seam allowance, this tape. I usually try to go a little thicker than that, but you can see I'm not off the fabric at all, so this will be fine. All right, so I'm going to line up all of my registrations, make sure it's all tilted the right way, and this should line up really good because this is an exact repeat of the other one. So that lines up really good. We're just going to leave it there. And I'm going to get glue on my template. And we'll cut these first. Well, I'm going to make sure I can get 10 before I cut anything. So I'll poke through the rest of the fabric to make sure I can get 10, because this is only 2. So that means I got to have 5 repeats of this. that might be a little tough, so we'll see. So this is not really centered. There we go. Okay, so take this off. Now that my fabric is down. And let's see if I can eyeball how good a job I did. Yeah, it looks pretty good. If I'm looking at the edges here and the edges here, I think I did a good job. So I'm going to turn the camera off for just a quick second and see if I can get 5 more repeats of that. If not, then we'll try to figure something else out. Okay, so I have been playing around with the fabric for a little while, and I am not going to be able to get 10 repeats of exactly the same hamster. So that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. The hamster itself is the same on every spot. That's not a repeat. What's different is what's below it. So some of them I won't have another hamster, so I won't get that pink, and then some will just be flowers. So what I think I'm going to do is try to at least do 2 matching repeats. So if I do this guy, then I'll do him again down here. So at least the bottoms I have 2 of each rather than just a completely random assortment. So I think that's the route I'm going to go. So I just have to find 5 pairs, if that makes sense. But I should be able to use these markings at the top to get the hamster in the same spot, because it looks like the flowers around the hamster are pretty much the same that are closest to him. So to get it going the right angle, I just want to line up my top registrations. So we have the little flower down here. I have this lined up pretty close. And so now he will stay in the same spot on the repeats. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one, and then I'll do its mirror and then find another spot that has one that I can mirror somewhere else too. So hopefully that makes sense. So they didn't really send enough fabric to be able to do all 10 literally exactly the same, but that's fine. Maybe you got to cut where you can, so if you can, certainly feel free, but I think this will work for me to be close enough. Yeah, I kind of moved my template a little, but this will be good. Good enough. As long as that hamster pretty much falls in the same spot and his little butt shows about the same, so that's perfect. And then we're gonna go to the repeat, which will be down here of this exact same one, and do that, and then I'll find a repeat in the middle. So that'll be my next project, to get all 10 of those cut out, and I'll show you what it looks like when we're done. All right, so I have all of my hamsters cut out. You can see it took a little bit to find the right placement on the fabric, but just play around with your fabric. You can see I have a nice, let's see, a nice pile of Swiss cheese. So I pretty much use this whole length of the fabric, but there is plenty of fabric here that I can use it for other projects and stuff like that too, so it's not a big deal. So there's plenty of in-between spots that aren't cut out. And what I did is I actually cut into the fabric to cut out so that it would stay together a little bit better and I can store it easier. So that is all set and done. Now we'll see how we did as far as cutting. So I just want to make sure that nothing looks totally off. I'm not worried about matching up the pairs yet. I can match them up after. So you can see these are a pair. They have the same head there. So it should be pretty easy to match them up after the fact. So they all look pretty good. So the next step will be to just baste these and then see where we are at from there. So again, I stacked them all so they're going the same way. Obviously these ones are pretty easy to do that with. And I'm going to start at the top right, go all the way around for each one and just get them all basted, and then I'll show you what they look like lined up after they're done. All right, so we are all basted. So I'm going to line up a couple of these just so you can get an idea of how this will work. And like I said, there's going to be pairs, so I'm going to try and put the pairs across from each other so you can see a little bit more pink here. That is paired with this one. So we'll do that one here and so on and so forth. Actually, I think I did 4 of those with a little pink. So we'll try to make like a little pattern or something with them so that they don't stand out, because obviously I'm not going to get a swirl or something like that since I couldn't get them to be all the same. But that is good enough for me. I am very happy with that. So then inserted here will be my hearts. That'll be the next piece like that. And then we have our straipies. Actually, let me see if I can find another heart. Maybe I just basted. I thought basted 2. Oh, I did baste 2. There we go. So hearts, then straipies, then these will go and it'll be one big medallion. So it'll be really pretty. So as far as stitching, these obviously have a pretty substantial tail because the end is so sharp. So what I tend to do, you don't want to cut the tail off completely because then you're cutting off your seam allowance. So everything that comes down here is my seam allowance for this tip, and I certainly don't want to take off too much of that seam allowance. So what I'm going to do is actually cut and leave about 1/4 of an inch. You can see where I'm cutting. And I'm just going to trim that tail a little bit so that we don't have as much of a tail in the middle when I'm done. So these will all be a little bit shorter and will hopefully overlap a little bit better. I didn't do that on the last one, and I really wish I had. I can still go back and do it, I guess, but it's a little harder once they're all stitched together. And the nice thing about having, like I said, the folds go the same way. So see how my folds all point up here? When I am lining these up to stitch, I don't worry about this side at all. What I do is I worry about the top, and I will look at my 2 folds and make sure that they are lined up. If my 2 folds are lined up, then my ends will be lined up. This is probably one of the hardest pieces to stitch, are these center medallions, because sometimes you can end up with going overshooting or undershooting your ends, and then they just don't line, they kind of get off kilter as you go. So if you just look at each individual piece as you're doing it, make sure your folds line up nicely, then your ends will also line up, and you just want to make sure you're going all the way to the end when you're stitching, and everything should work out really good. So this block 5-1 is all done. Hopefully you like this video. Hopefully it helped you get it all finished for yourself. I will work on the other blocks for month 5. We got 4 more blocks in the month in another video. We'll just send this video out as is. Please like this video so YouTube knows that you like it, and subscribe to my channel, as I do post these obviously very sporadically. So you want to make sure that you like the channel so that you will get alerted when new videos come out. Hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments. I do try and answer every comment that comes in, so don't hesitate to ask. I don't know all the answers, but I'm always willing to help. So thanks everybody, and have a nice day. Bye everybody.